Yeah. Chaudray, Tristan Henry, Vancouver, Hetchan, trying to Gretchen Deech A, Zer Deech A. That's just a very traditional, like a lot of my family, that's how they introduce themselves. It says, "Hi, my name is Tristan Henry. I live in Vancouver. I'm part of Trondigwetchin, or I am Trondigwetchin, and then I am Wolf Clan." Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Marcos. I'm from Brazil and I speak Portuguese. Meu nome é Marcos, eu sou do Brasil e eu falo português.
Hi, my name's Caleb Ellison Dicer.
Hi, I'm Tashina Lewis. I am Nispat on my mother's side. I am Simshan and Teltan on my father's side. My Nispat name is xʷməthkվəy, which means raven who uses wisdom.
Hi, my name is Brian. My ancestral language is Ojibwe or Anishinaabe.
So my ancestral language comes from the Athabascan dialect, which is, I think, northern Yukon, and it's Han.
Well, on my father's side, it is Cree. And on my mother's side, it's Gaelic, Irish. Yeah.
So with the Nispat, we use the Tsleil-Waututh dialect. And so that dialect is used within like the northern West Coast nations.
I think I would consider my ancestral language to be Portuguese. That is the language that my parents and my grandparents speak and spoke. But if you go to my great-grandparents, they spoke different languages. So, yeah, so it's hard to consider what my ancestral language is, but I think that I often just consider it to be Portuguese.
Do you speak that language, or are you learning / do you want to learn it?
I want to learn it. I know a few words in it. It's a language that, a lot of the fluent speakers I know are passing away. And I do have family that know it, but not fluently.
Yeah.
So it's something I definitely want to learn and keep alive.
So I feel like it has been a ongoing process of learning. I can't say that I can understand it fluently, but I can speak words or phrases, and I use like certain words on a daily basis. Like, say for example, I have 2 children, and on the way to school, I would always say like "hola," which means come here, or "tilden," which means hurry, or "bahan," which means run, and they can understand it. Yeah, or there are certain phrases that we would use. We don't say hello. We would say "amalawalana," which means how do you do. And that is like a common greeting that someone would use.
Yeah, I speak the language. It's my first language. It's the language that I grew up speaking.
I do speak it, and I am actually learning a little bit more of it. I don't speak it fluently, though. I'm actually a terrible speaker. My goal is to just be able to joke around with elders at powwows and that kind of thing, but there are less and less speakers.
Interested in learning, or are you in the process of learning?
I tried to learn a little bit a few years ago,
Of what?
and then I wasn't consistent with Cree. Did some like Cree courses. There's a lot of Zoom courses, and there was one that I did on Mondays. But I found it pretty repetitive because it was just sort of like the first, just like hey, hi, and the name is names. So I tried.
You spoke about how you have some family that speaks some of the language as well. Do you have any memories of that language from when you were younger or just growing up?
Yeah, no, I have a lot of it. It used to be called like Lushu, which I don't know what the name. I don't know why they changed it, but when I was really little, my great grandmother Like she would speak to me and pray to me in that language. So I think those are my earliest memories of hearing it. And then just being around family up in my territory, like my uncle, like when he would tell stories, he would jump in between English and Hong, and he would like kind of poke fun to see if I was actually paying attention. But it was like that's the one thing I love about, I think my family and probably a lot of, Indigenous people is they incorporate humor into, and I think learning is definitely uses a lot of humor.
My grandmother, she is 97. She'll be 90 this year. She is a fluent speaker in Musqueam, and English is her second language. But due to the school, that wasn't really taught to us. I mean, like my mother, she can understand it, and she tries, and she had tried to teach us growing up our initial language. But like myself, she used a lot of words and phrases that we could understand that I share with my own children.
How do you think growing up with that sort of language influenced you as a person today, or like your upbringing or anything?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up around I had it a lot when I was younger, but I think since I lived off reservation, like I lived away from my territory for most of my upbringing, so I feel like, I get distracted, but then once I reconnected and then the language kind of, I think my family is really, they want me to learn the language, and they want they're really encouraging for everybody in our First Nation to learn it. And there's a lot of opportunity. But yeah, I think hearing it when I was younger made a big influence on me wanting to learn it now.
So how that has shaped me today is I feel there is an importance to learn the language, because not only is it a part of who we are and our identity, I feel that there's so much that is involved within the language. And it's so complex, it's hard to explain. But like the stories and like the meaning behind those stories, I feel that because our language has not been written down and has been orally taught, to understand the stories, you can understand the language. And like the translation, because of like the loose translations too that could get lost.
What sort of barriers are you facing in learning your language, and what would be helpful for you to help you learn it?
Barriers. Definitely, I think I think English is, in a way, like since I know it so well, like I think my throat, there's certain sounds that my language uses that my body just isn't used to. And I think that's the biggest barrier. Like it takes a while to like learn a word, because when each language, like each dialect has different that's why there's like all the abbreviations or all like the different things in it, because that's usually a sign in like different throat, the way you use your throat. And I think I think English has really kind of like really slowed down the progress, because I've spoken all my life, but I have a lot of great language teachers. Like my cousins all teach it. Like I have two cousins. One teaches online courses, which I think is really helpful, and I want to take. And then one teaches it to like youth in schools, and they both are like super inspirational, because that's the one thing I love. Like when I go back, I hear the language all the time. Like they're speaking it to each other just casually, which I think is really nice. I don't have really anyone to talk casually about it with. Yeah.
I think the biggest barrier might just be the practicality of it, where it's like, if I learn it, there's probably not a lot of people that speak it. I think it is important to learn it, just in the sense that different languages sort of carry different worldviews, and I think it would be cool to be able to know that, but it's just not really practical because I guess it's not usable really with the people that I know. And one of the barriers that I have is just the time because I have to work. It's hard to cut out the time to learn it because it requires me to be very intentional.
That's what the kind of barriers that I'm facing actually is the amount of speakers that we have within community and on the outsets of community. Because somebody came into our community to teach us how to speak Ojibwe again, and they actually brought their own dialect. So that's a little bit problematic because it isn't actually ours, but we really appreciate them coming back and bringing that language back to the community.
I feel as a urban Nisquat, I feel so fortunate that we do have those opportunities within the Nisquatic society, that there are opportunities to learn language as well as the First Voices app. I feel the more accessible the language is, the easier it is to learn. And I think especially in this digital age, like having to have those opportunities, whether that's like through Zoom, like right now, that's something that they have been exploring since COVID, is having Zoom classes with fluent speakers from up north in the communities to be able to share the language.
I guess what would be helpful?
Having someone to practice with would be huge. My brother does live here, and we have talked about learning it together, but it just seems like we can't find the right time to do it at the same time. I have the resources, like online classes. They are available. It's just another thing is finding the time.
Well, I think that especially in the context of minority languages or indigenous languages, there isn't a lot of accessible information. A lot of the times it's really hard to get, even basic language lessons. So I understand that it is very hard and it's a very different situation than Portuguese. I can uh, think about my experience and thinking about things like watching TV shows, right, or listening to music in that language really helps you immerse in the world. And I think through like art, being music or just a movie, you can actually be able to express those deeper meanings of words and be able to acquire a different depth of the language when you actually immerse yourself in art. So I think I can bring that to it, but I do understand that even accessing art pieces in a minority language or an indigenous language, it can be very hard and quite inaccessible. And there's a lot of work that is being done. Um, so I think that future is promising in when it comes to um, the amount and the quality of language resources, especially with the internet and all of that. But I guess immersing in the art, pick something that you like, either it being, acting or music or poetry, something that is more emotional in nature, and then just kind of find something like that, but in the language you want to learn. That will really help you get into the world.
I think if a bunch of people I knew suddenly learned the same language, that would be helpful.
Yeah. Or like
It
if you
won't.
were like immersed in the community.
Yeah. Yeah, but I guess this is also like adjacent to a lot of other issues. Stuff. Like, I feel like it makes sense that people don't have access to language in the same way because a lot of indigenous people are separated from their community, and a lot of like Irish language. I'm not as familiar with it, but I think it's a pretty similar thing. Like it.
You kind of already answered this, but how, where, and like with who would you like to learn or share your language? How would you like to see that happening?
Well, I mean, First Voices has always been great, but I've also seen languages that have apps where it teaches you the language. And I don't know what exact languages, but it'd be cool if every language had an app. It's a project that I think I saw it recently, and I think it'd be cool to have things like that where you can kind of just have something where you can ask it something and then it will respond in your language. And because I know that's just the biggest thing is having someone to talk to about it.
A dream way to have access to that language would be, I think, just having like more classes that are accessible with families with young children. I think it's great that that we do have language classes within the Squamish society.
My dream way to learn language would be if my father stayed with me as a young kid and spoke Cree, and we lived in this happy, perfect world without capitalism, and everybody I knew could speak it or other languages.
The ideal place for me to learn would be, with an elder from my community. Ideally, it would be my great-great-grandmother, Arletta Nee Silver Riley. She was actually one of the first people to establish a friendship center in Ontario, the Namarin Friendship Center in London, for our people that were living in an urban center just outside of our community. So, it would be amazing to learn from her, but it's not possible. Elders and community, just getting back to the basics and getting your hands dirty.
Room Future is one in which the attitude towards those minority languages is a positive attitude. It's one that recognizes the value, the meaning, and the richness in all of those minority languages, all of those indigenous languages. Understand that, especially for indigenous languages, there are thousands of years of knowledge gathering that's encoded in those languages, right? It's beautiful, and there's different perspectives, completely new perspectives of seeing things that are embedded in those languages. And it's beautiful, and it's so rich, and it's more valuable, honestly, than learning French or Spanish for a job, right?
How might learning your language be good for you?
I know for me, like reconnecting, I felt like there was like a hole missing, like a part of me missing, and I was filling it with other things. But language is like another part of that. I feel like I use it. I would use it in the prayers I do when I smudge, when I'm learning songs or making songs. I know like songs have been really helpful too for me to learn the language, and the more that I can, once I learn how to properly say like a word, the song becomes more of what it like traditionally was, or my ancestors saying it.
Yeah, I think that there's like language learning and language acquirement, like to acquire a language versus to learn a language. And it's really important to learn a language, right? The grammar and maybe the writing of it. But it's only through art and, poetry or music or films that you actually acquire it, right? It's through real conversations, it's through expressing your emotions in the language that you're able to come up with creative ways to use it. And that's how you actually uh, get into that world of the language.
The more I learn, like I feel like the more me and the more my ancestors, like I feel like more how my ancestors felt growing up before, it was kind of taken away and where English kind of took over. Like I use it, like when I use it in my prayers, it feels like my aunt, like especially my great grandmother, like since she spoke it pretty fluently, and English was kind of a second language to her. Like I feel like I can actually, it feels like I'm speaking to her and my grandparents and my uncles and stuff, because that's all they really knew growing up, living in the bush. So I think in a way it's like if I feel closer to my family if I learn the language, and I think that's important.
It's like you're speaking to them, but then they're also speaking through you too. It's really special.
That's like a big teaching I got with singing. But like when you sing, it's not you singing, it's your ancestors singing for you. Yeah, there was an elder that used to come to a drum circle, and he would tell us that when we would sing in the drum circle, he could see our ancestors dancing above us. And I always thought that was like a cool image to kind of remember, because it's like, when you're in urban space, like the school or, anywhere in Vancouver, there's so many different like so many different nations in just one room sometimes. So it's, thinking that they're all behind us is special.
I think it would benefit me in a sense that I would be able to fully grasp and understand what the elders would say because it's so beautiful and so moving. I feel that my soul recognizes the language, and there's like this feeling that is hard to explain. It almost awakens the soul.
Yeah.
But to understand it, to hear it, like I can't understand fully. Like, again, I can understand words and phrases. I feel it would be beneficial to really understand the elders and grasp what they're saying, because they have so much knowledge and importance to, there's stories or experiences. Like every feast that I've gone to, there's always been an elder that would share for maybe like 15 minutes, and I'm just sitting there like a child, listening attentively and trying to grasp onto what they're saying. But I know wholeheartedly, like there's a lot of value and importance to what they're saying.
I think, beneficially, what's beneficial about learning our languages is bringing things back that maybe have been forgotten, right? Like I said, with Ojibwe, it's not about the exact translation, the word-for-word translation. It's more about the feeling and the observations that our people have made over time, and that's how they describe these things, these items, these different relatives in nature.
I think it just enriches your experience, because I think all people build their identity off of their culture and experience, and being part of a culture where your language is not really used is interesting, because I feel like you can't experience the depth of that culture without knowing the language. For like a lot of people, they can go back to a home country and they can experience the language and the culture, and I think for Indigenous people that's not as possible. There's an example that I use all the time that sort of showcases how the framework is different in Indigenous languages. English language is so colonial and capitalistic, like through and through, and I think that changes the way we think about things. Whereas, like, the benefit of using different languages, I think it can rewire your brain in the way that you understand the world around you. In a Cree language, when you're talking to like a tree, it's like there's them, the tree. The language is acknowledging the life that exists within all life. Like a tree is alive, like if grass is alive, and they would even extend that to like water, and the sky and whatever. And English, we're just like, oh, there's a tree, there's an object, so we objectify a lot of things. So we think the subconscious implications of constantly objectifying and possessing things of the language probably amounts to an output, I guess. I don't know. And I think if you shifted, even through learning, it probably help you change your like sort of worldview.
And hopefully somewhere there's some kind of recordings or something like that we can examine and hopefully bring back that old language. And one thing I wanted to say about Ojibwe is, rather than just being a word-for-word translation of the English language, the translation of Ojibwe often is about how, something sounds or how it feels, and how maybe it interacts with another organism in nature. So, it's a beautiful language. All of our Indigenous languages are beautiful, and they go so much deeper than the English language.
Well, growing up speaking Portuguese, I cannot think of a reality where that's not the case, because it didn't just influence who I am, it is who I am. So, well, I grew up in Brazil, so the benefits of speaking Portuguese are everywhere, because that's the language you need to speak. It's the national language of Brazil. And in Canada, as a minority language, as an immigrant language, I think that it really helps build community. It really helps to, if you're even in the public space, in the SkyTrain or whatever, and, someone speaking Portuguese and they might seem lost, you feel the need to help them. So there's already that connection that's already there just by speaking the same language. And I think that speaking speaking your language, knowing how to speak your language is great for community building, for being able to have a support system that's outside of your friends, outside of your family, but it's not so broad that it's just anyone. It's people that speak your language. It's its own support system that you can sometimes depend on for certain things. So I think that it's very important for that. Also, it really shapes the way you think about things and the way you carry yourself and the way you understand problems in your life. So, knowing your language can help you really see things differently, um, which has been a great benefit for me, and I think for others would be too. In Brazilian Portuguese, there's a lot of words that don't exist in English as well. I think that a word that comes in my head is often the word that's a lot of, I feel like Brazilian poets use is saudade, which means longing for something or for someone or for a place. And it's supposed to be very nostalgic. Um, and that's just like, I feel the most common example of a Portuguese word that cannot be translated into English, but there's a lot of other words as well that you just that it doesn't exist in English. So you can take your like a whole essay of words to be able to explain the concept or the feeling, but even then it wouldn't be the same because just um, the impact that one word can carry all of that meaning already is lost.
With the language is interconnected. It's interconnected with the land. It's interconnected with art. It's interconnected with the people. It's interconnected with so many things, right? And so for children, I feel like it's so important that we teach them because we want those stories to carry on. We want the value and the language and the culture to carry on. Without the language, I feel like that connection is lost, and we don't want it to be lost forever. There is a resurgence, there is an ongoing act of having the language be taught to the children. And yeah, I feel like I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that, you know, with my children's generation and their children's generation, that the language will still be alive and we'll have more fluent speakers. Like I mentioned before, with my grandmother being a fluent speaker in English being her second language, it blows my mind. Like there's not very many people today that can say that Nishka is their first language.
I think it's really impactful because in a way it's just an extension of representation. Indigenous people are very underrepresented in a lot of areas, so language being something that people can learn is just another area of that representation. And I think when a young person it just even sees that or experiences that, it increases their sense of agency in the world. Because if you go around the world seeing just white stories, just white people, just white language, just English, then you're going to think the world is a certain way. You're not going to really maybe understand your place in it. But if we have that representation in the area of language, yeah, I think it gives Indigenous youth agency and empowerment. So yeah, I think language is important, but it's always hard because I think to be successful at something, the environment has to be like conducive to that success, and I just feel like there's not a lot of environments where languages like Gaelic or Cree can really thrive. So I think the biggest thing is just creating those environments.
And I feel like respecting the language is not about always saying the right thing in the correct pronunciation constantly, but it's about being able to listen and to learn and to try again and to commit. And then you respect the language by doing that. You know, I don't think it's realistic that we would all just learn the language we want to learn like that and just be able to speak properly. You know, even with English, even in your native language, it's still, you know, you still make mistakes, you still say the wrong things, it's still hard to make grammatical rules and stuff. So, you know, I understand that feeling of holding back, of disrespecting the language, of disrespecting the nation by saying the wrong thing. But yeah, getting it wrong first might be a step in the right direction, right? It actually probably is. Yeah, I think things are going well. I think that also, you know, you can be completely immersed in a culture and still not be able to speak a language. That doesn't mean that you're not part of that. That doesn't mean you're not part of that community, just because you don't speak that language. Um, So that it's very important to remember that as well.
As an urban spot, you know, or I guess just anybody who wants to learn their language, like it's out there. You know, the resources are out there. First Voices is a really great resource. They have many First Nations languages within their bank, their language bank. And I think, you know, whatever words you learn, you know, continue to say it out loud. I think so. Finding creative ways to learn your language, whether that's through like everyday appliances, it's there. You know, take the time to learn, you know, and whether that's like in creative ways. But the most important thing is to not give up.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Miigwech.
Muzzy Cho, thank you very much in my language. And one of my favorite words, it's Huzu Kana Cha, means take care of yourself, which I think it's always a nice way to end it.
Yeah. Thank you, Tashina.
No worries. Thank you.